Hey everybody, this is Doc Mack with the Galloping Ghost Arcade. It is Monday, September 3rd. We're joined here tonight with Chris Dellutri, who is one of our regular members at the arcade and is also one of the premier members on our Galloping Ghost Productions team. We're fortunately joined here tonight also by Scott Lambert, who's the owner of the Underground Retrocade, which is a new arcade that opened out in East Dundee. So thanks for both for coming. Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about your arcade that just opened recently?
Okay. We had been huge fans of the Ghost here, had been coming out here for a while, and decided we wanted something closer to home. And we saw this was a nice, viable operation. It was something we might be able to do, and there wasn't really something like this servicing our area. So we put it in place, and it's been running great. You've really set an excellent model that's easy to follow, and we're just trying to do the same thing, and that's working out fantastic.
Great. How long have you actually been open now?
We opened in mid-June, so we're just coming up on 3 months.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
How's everything been going so far for you?
It's good. Every week it gets a little bit better.
Yeah.
Business builds, and as word of mouth spreads, more and more people know about us, and they come on by. They like what they see. We have a lot of folks that will visit and come back. So it seems like we're doing it right.
Cool. How many games do you have up there now?
We've got a little bit over 50,
50?
That work. We've probably got about 60 cabinets, and we've got usually about 10 we're working on, and we got about 50 on the floor that are working.
Very cool. What we're I know you've been putting up some new stuff. I saw you. What are some of your newest games that you put up recently?
We just picked up a Gyrus in fantastic condition. Nice. We're really excited about that one. It was kind of interesting. I had played it right before bringing it home. I'm like, this plays funny. And I remember the controls for Gyrus are a little weird. It's something that really takes some getting used to. So I play with it. I'm like, oh, this is fine. And I kind of brought it back, and we were playing with it. And I had a couple of high score guys come in, and they were fiddling around. They're like, there's something not quite right. I'm like, but it's doing what it's supposed to. So we pulled up MAME as a reference just to see what would happen. And I kind of got used to what the MAME stick would do. And then I went back to the Gyrus machine. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't right. So I started fiddling with it, and I came to realize that the stick had been rotated 90 degrees. So the top was actually off to the left. And started looking at it, took it all apart. And the way the stick is set up, it's not a perfect square, it's a rectangle. So you can't just rotate the stick itself 90 degrees to get everything to work right. We actually had to unwire and rewire the stick and move all the wires, 90 degrees around. Once we got that done, plays like a charm.
That's awesome. How, since you've opened, have you, I know having gone through the same thing, it's like you can never really be prepared for the undertaking of fixing your machines, especially once you get over 20.
Sure.
What have been some of your more interesting issues you found with machines? And do you handle all the maintenance yourself now?
Yeah, I wish I could say that I was skilled enough like you are to do it all myself, but I've picked up what you've taught me. But beyond that, when we get to board level stuff, I either have to send it out or get somebody that really knows what they're doing to kind of fiddle around. So we've got some good resources here in the Chicagoland area. I mean, Chicago's kind of the home of a lot of this stuff, and there are still folks in the area that can do the work. And it's kind of hit or miss. You got to figure out who the right guys are. And we've done that. We're pretty satisfied with our vendors right now. And the maintenance is not so bad. We were able to take care of it. I've kind of showed my sons as well. They're helping me with the business. So we do the general stuff. And then when it gets pretty hairy, then we send the stuff out, and eventually it comes back repaired. It'd be nice if it came back quicker, but it's a business, right? They've got other people to take care of, and we just want to have the games up and running for our customers as quick as possible.
Very cool.
Yep.
What have been your most popular games so far?
Just about everybody will take a turn on Time Crisis, and just about everybody will go over and they'll get on the X-Men machine. And we've got that 6-player X-Men.
Very nice.
And yeah, people jump all over that, especially when we get the weekend crowd, which is kind of a different mix than our weekday crowd. They come in, and it's usually a big group of folks, and they gravitate right to that because they can all play at the same time, and they love it.
It's usually going to be your loudest corner, too, at some point.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's either the X-Men stuff is going on over there, or you can hear the clacking of the guns on Time Crisis. Yep.
Is there any holy grail game that you're looking for right now that if you came across it, you'd have to pick it up?
Yeah. There are a bunch out there. The one that I personally have been looking for forever is TaxScan. And we've kind of joked about this one before. I mean, TaxScan being a vector game is fairly difficult to keep running, and it's sufficiently rare. That game was, they offered a conversion kit after TaxScan came out, so a lot of those machines were converted away. And it's just, I have yet to see one come across that's viable.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, if I find one, I'll probably jump on it.
Is there anything else that's been heavily requested over at your arcade? Or?
I had a guy come in, and he gave me a hard time for not having a pole position. And, you know, the pole positions in particular are kind of rough to keep going. We had a pole position 2, and he even took me to task with the fact that it wasn't pole position 1, it was pole position 2, and that wasn't quite enough. And I'm like, well, we've got our eyes open for a pole position, and if one comes along, you know, I'm sure we'll add it to the floor. But it's all a matter of what comes up and is available.
I remember when we first opened, one of the guys that used to look at some of our boards used to tell me it takes 3 pole position boards to make one good one.
I believe it. I believe it. I had just had the one, and I had it out to our repair shop, and they started working on it, and by the time I got it back, it looked like they had replaced every other chip on the board.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a little tough to have a working pole position machine. Any place you find some place that has one, they know what they're doing to keep it running.
Hey.
Yep.
Well, again, ours is running. We've gone through numerous boards. I've had, I think we have 4 pole position cabinets in storage. So it's a really rough board to keep up and running. Are there any of the newer games that you're looking for? Like recently, Cave just put out a game called Dodonpachi Sai Daiojo, which very popular in the shoot 'em up crowd.
Sure.
Obviously, you're more of a geared toward,
Got
like
that
you
classic
definitely
bag.
have you have Time Crisis. I believe you have Tekken as well. And
Yep. We got a couple of fighters.
would you ever consider getting a game like a Dodonpachi?
Sure. I think our crowd style is a little different. A lot of the folks that are coming in to our arcade have that kind of classic bent to them, and we've targeted to be that way just because that's the way I am. You know, we go for the whole 80s experience, so we got the music and videos and all that kind of stuff playing in the background as well. So you get immersed in the 80s when you come out to ours. When you kind of get into the 90s and later games, and of course Time Crisis, of course, is the perfect example of, you know, getting outside of that vein. You know, I don't know. Would I have one? If people are asking for it, we're probably going to put it on the floor. But right now, they're just so blown away with things they haven't seen for 20 years that I don't think people they're not changing their style. Right? They're coming in and they're enjoying the classics the way they are, and maybe after some time they'll play the classics again and they'll kind of get used to it, and then they'll start moving on to the newer games. But right now, the focus has been on the really old stuff.
And one of the main things that really goes hand in hand with classic gaming is definitely scoring. I've noticed a lot of recent activity from you with on Arcade.com, which is a great resource for high scores and everything. And also congratulations for becoming a referee on there. It is really great to see you putting in scores there, because there's so many arcades that don't really take advantage of that. Have you seen, and it took us a while to really develop our core crowd of high scorers, but have you seen like people really taking an interest in scoring by you?
We have, and there's kind of 2 classifications of folks that do it. There are the well-known folks that already know about Arcade and have been tracking their scores and are big time into that. They've come out, and if they're local to our area or just happen to be in the area, they're repeat customers. They come out, they practice, they set their scores. We have a whole new slew of folks that are people that would just kind of be passing by that aren't necessarily, you know, people that are going for high scores, and all of a sudden they're starting to take an interest. So we've kind of got these 2 levels of people we're trying to take care of. And we'll have to see how it goes. There might be some talent out there. We had a guy come in. We had a group of guys come in, and they had originally intended to try and take a run at the Galga high score. We got about 1 million points on our Galga machine. They were going to take a run at that, and when they hit 60 and realized that it was going to be a challenge, they started looking at the other games, and by the end of the night, they had gone over to our Sega Hang-On machine, and the two of them were kind of batting back and forth as they were upping their levels, and they stayed at it all the way till close. Yeah. And by the time they were done, they had set the local high score in our arcade great. For that machine. It's like fantastic. They're like, well, we'll come back too. We've seen a lot of that, where somebody will set a score, and the next day somebody else will top their score. Those guys are right back in.
Yeah, it's always been such a driving force. Again, when we opened, it took a little bit to get everybody up to speed on the scoring for games that weren't Donkey Kong or Q*bert or what have always been known for high scores. Like every game that does track scoring, there's a world record for it or could be a world record for it, and it's a very viable achievement that is of great interest to a lot of people. It's also such a great, it's almost like a marketing technique that it really does get people to take interest in it and keep coming back to set high scores. James White was one of the guys that when we first started, he was really interested in scores, and he would literally, if somebody took one of his scores, he was in the next day. So it's great that you're really following that and driving people to be interested in scores, because there's so many, the younger people that come into the arcade, they've never really had that element with the console gaming. And I know like you have console gaming at your arcade.
Right.
Have you seen any sort of like hesitance for younger gamers to play these older games?
It seems like there's a mix. Some of the younger kids come in and they want to focus on what they know, so they'll gravitate right over to our console area, and they just kind of, even though they've got it at home, they'll come in and they'll play it with us, and they're really missing out. Other kids will come in and they get it, right? They're like, I got that. I can go play that at home. I really want to focus on these things that I've never seen before and get good at them. I get a kid that's my middle son's age, and he's like focused on getting a good Donkey Kong score. And he's in there, every couple of days, and he's working his Donkey Kong score up. I mean, he's beyond what I can do. And I mean, I've been playing Donkey Kong for almost 30 years. And it's just like, where did this come from? I don't know, don't really care. It's awesome to see this generation get focused on that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's neat.
As far as like, I know like one of the big draws here has always been like tournaments and stuff. Have you thought about like promoting any high score tournaments or anything? And I know me and you have discussed doing a Galloping Ghost Arcade versus Underground Retrocade in a few games, and
yep.
Hopefully we'll be officially announcing that very soon. But have you thought about doing any internal high score runs?
Sure. We haven't. So far, the challenge has been getting the doors open, making sure everything's working, getting our layout put together. The big focus for me personally has been doing the artwork and getting all the signage up. And that's been a strange and surprisingly larger task than I had expected. So, maybe I'm focusing too much on the art and not enough on the science. But definitely we want to move forward and put together programs that will get folks to come in and enjoy the games for more than just the game itself, but for what it can build for the community, right? So we're getting there. I know that with the fighters, we're trying to put stuff together with the Chicago fighting game community. You guys have a couple of nights a week where they're coming out here to play. Yep. We're going to try and make a home for them as well, so that they have other places to go. And then above and beyond that, we'll come up with some sort of tournament-style gaming situation on the other machines.
Very cool. Yep. And again, if you're catering to the fighting game community, there's so many hardcore communities out there, like shooter community. There's like the Dance Revolution groups, the more Silver Age gamers that had played mostly like 16-bit era stuff. Mm-hmm. Your Golden Axe, Altered Beast, a lot of Sega stuff. Who do you feel your arcade, aside, like, you definitely cater towards the classics. What other avenues of, like, genre gaming do you hope to cater to and expect to, would really go to your arcade and really enjoy the place?
Well, we're really deep in the classics, and once we get outside of the classics, then we kind of go pretty wide. But we do have an Alter Beast and a Golden Axe. I think we have those on your recommendation, actually. At some point when I was doing the purchasing, you were like, oh, go grab one of those. And as soon as I found one, I snatched one up. And it's a fantastic thing you made those recommendations, because absolutely, guys come in, and the position of those two games, Alter Beast in particular, is just inside our front door. They come in and they see that, and there's a certain age range of guys where it's just immediately the recognition is there, and they go right back to being in high school, and they come in and they'll sit on that game all night having a fantastic time. So it's really cool. I mean, my era is all the way back to the late 70s, early 80s. So I've got that classic thing going, but it's fantastic to see somebody else kind of be turned on in the same way. And depending on what I can find for people to play, we're going to continue to try and do those sort of trips in time, you know.
Very cool. I've noticed you also have you have a exclusive on Arcade. You're the only arcade that has it. It's a Macross game.
Macross Super Space Fortress Macross. Yep.
It's a lot of the niche games, stuff like that we have, like Dragon Ball Z, Godzilla. Games that really have a strong fan base. We have people that come in just to play those games. And they're usually not the greatest games ever, but just the fact that you have that. Have you had many people come out just to play that yet, or is it?
Nobody that's really mentioned the fact that they've come out to play it specifically. We've got it all set up from a competition perspective on Arcade, so the dips are set and it's ready to go. We've got a card up on top of it that plainly shows to anybody playing the game that nobody's really set a house high score on it yet. Nobody's really asked, make sure I come observe and validate my score. So it's kind of like, okay, it's there for the taking. I mean, anybody could come along, and I mean, if you really want to get started in the high score business, you could jump on that one, and you're going to have the house score no matter what you do, right? I mean, we have one kid that's come in, and he's kind of gone through game to game doing that, and even he was like, yeah, I'm going to try this one instead, and he went and he set a house score for us on Road Blasters. So maybe he'll go to that next. Or maybe we'll have somebody else come in that wants to get themselves a score, and they'll be up there.
I know Chris here has been looking for a game that he can get a high score in. He was hoping to get it on our new G.I. Joe, but both James White and Matt Rocco had already set scores.
See, and that's the problem too. Is that anytime I try to get on any of the games, and I'm by no means as talented as a lot of the people that come in here at these games, but as soon as I set a score on something that's brand new, and we get the perk of that too, working on the games, is once you put it on the floor and it's up and running, there's no score yet. So, oh great, I'm going to be the first one to set it. Awesome, I got a score. Then Matt Rocco or James White comes by and sees it. Oh, and they're like, oh, what's this? And then they spend 5 seconds on it, and I have to walk away. So, but I mean, it's fun though. Like I don't get jaded by it at all. Like I'm happy to play. Like it's great, but it would be nice to find a game that I actually just get really into and I get to be really good at, and that's the whole thing I think with a lot of the newer gamers out there too, experiencing the arcades again for the first time is a chance of learning a game and learning how to go and all the levels and what's the best way and the best route to get any kind of high score, and so I can relate in that sense.
It's absolutely fantastic when we've got somebody who's a pretty hardcore guy and has maintained high scores, on Arcade or where else, and you actually get to watch them play. Boy, is that something. If you ever get the opportunity to do that, anybody that's listening, I'd definitely do it. I mean, I myself have hammered away at Donkey Kong forever and can't get very far in it, but all it took was watching Hans play it for a little while, and it's like, now I get it.
Yeah.
And he was friendly enough to kind of in the middle of his game turn around and kind of explain things. George Strain as well, as he came in, he set several high scores with us. Every time he does it, he's kind of walking me through his technique and all of it. I mean, even he came in, he was going to just fiddle on the Pac-Man machine for a little while, and he had played it for about 20, 30 minutes, and he's like, your Pac-Man machine it's got this jumper that's set for the ultra hard setting, and I'm like, I swear I took the back off, set all the dips the way it's supposed to be. He's like, no, go research it, you'll see. And he could tell this just by gameplay that it was running that much harder. And I mean, he could tell within the first 2 frames.
Yeah.
Okay, so I pulled it apart, and lo and behold, there it was. The jumper was soldered. So we unsoldered it, and he tested it again, and it was good to go. And then he went and put a high score on it. It's just the depth of knowledge of some of these guys it blows my mind. I mean, they can tell wherever you're at what the settings are. I mean, they don't have to look at the dip switches. They know what the machine's going to do.
For sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's, again, been the great thing here, too. Like, we have so many of our staple gamers like James White, Matt Walters, Matt Rocco, Chris Teeter. And it's been, we just had our 2nd-year anniversary. It's been this growing thing of the more good gamers that come, you're just opened up to so much more knowledge towards the actual games themselves. And it's like right now, I'm again, you said you've been open for how long now?
Almost 3 months.
Almost 3 months. Like,
Yep.
the regulars that keep coming, that's only going to keep growing and growing and growing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably after a year, it'll be interesting to see who your staple players are. And it's, again, like, the more names added to Arcade, the better. So definitely going to be interesting to watch you grow. And
We're definitely trying to put down some pretty big roots in East Dundee. You know, we've got some folks that were existing high score gamers, and they've kind of made us their home. But we've set our pricing so that everybody in the neighborhood can kind of come down and with very little investment can really get into it.
what is your pricing?
So we've got.
And where are you located?
Okay, so we're at 1 East Main in East Dundee. We're right off of Route 72. If anybody's familiar with where 72 intersects the Fox River, we're right there on the river. We're in this little town of East Dundee, fantastic little town, bunch of little restaurants, small shops, very fun kind of out in the country sort of place. We got plenty of bars, so there's opportunity to really make an evening or a weekend of it. And the way we're structured with our entries, not unlike yours, once you pay to get in, you're good for the evening. So you can come and go. You can go and enjoy dinner, go and enjoy some drinks at the bar, come on back and play the games. We'll be there all night for you. Our pricing is set so we only charge $10, and for the $10, you play all day. And we have a couple of different programs that go around the $10. So we've got a $5 return if you want to come back tomorrow and play 2 days in a row. Your next day is only $5. Just purchase your next day wristband before you leave on the first day. Great America does the same thing. It's that wicked concept. And for folks that they're not sure if they really want to get back into it, and it's very rare that somebody does this and then doesn't convert up. We have an introductory price of $5. Basically, anybody coming in the door is going to wind up paying $5 just to hang out if they don't want to play the games. You get 30 minutes of gameplay along with that $5, so it gives you the opportunity to kind of get reacquainted with some old friends. And usually, what happens is people play a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden, that 30 minutes is gone, and we'll come over and we'll find you, and we're like, so, what do you think about continuing play? And they're like, yep, I'm going to keep playing. And in the end, whether it's $10 or $15, back in the day when we grew up, it was all quarters, and you were out your entire week's allowance in a heartbeat, right? And our model is you get to play all day. It could be $30. It's a ridiculous bargain.
Have you had anybody that has had any issue with, and even now today, we have people that come in, they'll come in and be like, $15 to play video games. I'm not doing that. And then it's like, have you had much of that, or like?
We've had some folks that have popped in, and we tried to address them with the $5 thing just to let them get a taste. And if we can't make you happy with $5, I'm at a loss. We're not going to make you happy with the games. You got to go do something else, and that's fine. Maybe it's not for everybody. We love it. The people that are hanging out are loving it. So, that's one less person to wait to finish the game before you get to play it.
Sure. Like for us here, I know maintenance on the machines is such a huge element. And there's always been a lot of factors of going to an arcade, and even people in the industry, they expect certain things. Myself, like going to an arcade now, I went around when we were doing our Galloping Ghost productions. We did a a thing called Support Your Local Arcade, where we went to about 80 places that had arcades, whether they be traditional arcades or a movie theater or pool hall. And we were checking the games out, and the condition of them was always very poor. We were asking if we could repair machines for these places for no charge. So when we opened up, it was a huge element, making sure that everything that was on and played good. It can be a undaunting task sometimes, especially like you got 50, 60 games.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be tough. Like, how do you handle that yourself?
When anybody comes in, we ask them to absolutely tell us if they have any problems with the games, to bring it to our attention so we can address it immediately. We've been fortunate enough that the games that we were able to purchase in the last couple of months have been pretty solid. And we try, and if we come up with a game that isn't as solid, we'll try and take it off the floor and make sure it's better before we put it out there and let people get frustrated. I mean, we have Viper, which is another local exclusive. And we had it on the floor for a while, and it was kind of up and down. And eventually, I pulled it off the floor simply because we don't want people to be frustrated with the games. So unless it's playing really solid, we'll take it away until we can get it to that level.
Cool. Have you had any? And there's always so many parts that are so obscure, like everything from. Like the original stick from Tron, or like for us, we recently had to track down a frontline spinner. Is there any machine that's just missing one or two parts that you're looking for the original part for? Or?
I have two Sega Turbos. We had one on the floor for a while. We had a Sega Turbo Cabaret that we were letting people play, and it worked fine for about a month, and now it's having some issues. So I'm kind of hoping I'll be able to make one game out of the two. We'll have to see how it goes. There's the car itself is stretching, and the buildings are kind of glitching out. So the other, I've got the full stand-up, and then we've got the Cabaret. The full stand-up sounds really good. I mean, the monitors never worked in it, but when you play the game, you can hear the game running, and it does all the things it's supposed to do. So I'm hoping the display isn't getting glitchy, and we'll switch it over to the Cabaret and see what happens.
Yeah.
If not, then we're going to try and put a good monitor into the stand-up and go with it. But, if I had an extra monitor sitting around, we probably got other games that we want to stick it in first.
Cool.
Yep.
What games do you have coming up?
Right now, we had a Crystal Castles for a very short period of time, and it started glitching out. So we sent Crystal Castles off for repair with Gorf, and what was the third one? It's like when I need to remember the names of the games, I always glitch out on the names myself. I don't remember. But we've got 3 out there, and they should be coming back sometime, hopefully in the next week.
Yeah.
And we'll get them back on the floor. They were just a little off, and we wanted them to be perfect. And the repair shop that we sent them to does a fantastic job setting stuff up. So hopefully they'll come back nice and solid.
Cool. Like on the tell me, like, what's your general crowd like there? Like, it's usually one of the first concerns that, like, here we'll get a phone call, like, is there going to be a ton of kids there? Or people are always concerned. Back in the late 80s, it was always arcades were kind of lumped in with having a rougher crowd, and what's
sure.
hooligans and
yeah, no.
What's your crowd like?
Our crowd is very similar to the Ghost here. There's a lot of folks that are in the kind of 25 to 45 range. There are folks coming back for the first time, enjoying their past, and there are other folks that are seeing it for the first time, never seen something like this before. We have some kids, and that's probably 75% of the crowd, and then we've got people that haven't really seen this before. So you've got little kids coming out. They generally are there earlier in the day, particularly on the weekends, and they don't come and they don't usually spend the day. They'll come out and they'll spend an hour or two, and their attention span is exhausted, and their parents are exhausted as well. So the kids kind of come and go pretty quickly, but mostly it's pretty mature older folks.
Yeah. And I guess right now would be a good time. What are your hours? Like, when are you open?
Yeah, we just switched up our hours. We transitioned from our summer schedule to the non-summer schedule. Right now, we're opening up at 5 o'clock during the week and staying open till 10. If there are folks on the floor at the end of the day, we're not going to kick them out right away. So we'll stay as late as 11 if they want to keep playing. On the weekends, we'll open at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we'll stay open until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Cool.
Yeah,
Definitely.
not quite as wide as your hours, but it's work. I don't know how you guys do it. I honestly don't.
What else would I be doing?
I guess sleep's not such a bad thing sometimes.
Overrated.
Yeah, I hear you. we want the machines to cool down. We want the building to cool down, and we want the people that are maintaining stuff to cool down.
Yeah. It's has that been an issue? I know we recently had an issue with heat here. How is it?
Yeah, boy, this summer was horrible.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a new location, so we're trying to shake the building out, and prior to filling it with, 50 machines that put off heat, we're standing in the building before we took it over, and it was nice and cool, and we thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. And we got in there, and no sooner did we get in there than the summer really kicked off, and this year was a super hot summer. And we realized that the sun, as it's setting, is reflecting off the Fox River right on our building. So essentially, we've set up an arcade inside of a kiln. and those really hot days, right around the 4th of July, I mean, I came in, and it was over 100 degrees, and no matter what we did, we could not, for the life of us, get the place cooled down. It was horrible. So what we figured out was we run the air conditioning at night, and we kind of maintain a certain temperature, and then right before we'll open, we'll crank the air way down, and we'll wait until the last moment to turn the machines on. Because as soon as you turn the machines on, I mean, they're like little ovens themselves.
Sure.
So by doing that, we don't overtax the AC system. We kind of bank some of that. I mean, our building we're on a huge concrete foundation with nothing underneath, and the foundation is probably 4 to 6 feet of solid concrete. So when we freeze it up with the air at night, it radiates the cold, or it makes it a big heat sink during the day, and that helps it for us. And we've got some huge fans, so we get a lot of air movement, and that's helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, those first couple of days, though, I felt bad for people coming in, because I was in there just dying from the heat myself, and it's like, you want to come in and play, would love to have you, but I got to tell you, you might pass out. When we were giving out free water to people, it's like anything to make you more comfortable. We had a heating and air guy come in, and he didn't get 3 steps past the front door, and he's like, nope, not playing, and you need an extra air conditioning compressor because this is not going to fly. I'm like, okay. And then his buddy proceeded to give me a hard time about the fact that we only had pole position 2 and not pole position 1. I was like, well, guys, the pole position thing isn't changing until I find a machine, and the air conditioning isn't changing either. So you're welcome to have a water, but otherwise we're going to do the best we can. And it has turned out to be, bank that AC at night, and then during the day, it'll absorb it and make it a little bit better. But man, the sun bouncing off the Fox River, unbelievable.
Sure. Well, winter's coming.
Yes. I wonder what that'll be like. I mean, I kind of shared my anxiety with you about just what was going to happen when I got my first electric bill. And boy, if you ever want to be afraid of something, hey, I was up. I don't think I slept for a month, and then we wound up in this situation where ComEd estimated our meter reading at the end of our first month. So all of a sudden, and they estimated on the prior month, when the prior tenants were in there doing nothing.
Sure.
Right? So the prior month was like $50, so they gave me a $100 bill, and they're like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. I'm like, really? Okay. So it was 60 full days of biting my nails, waiting to see just what was going to happen with all these machines, and the air conditioning cranked and constantly running. And then about 2 weeks ago, the bill finally landed where I could see what was going to happen. I'm like, okay, we're going to stay in business. Let's move forward, and that's where we're at now. Fun stuff.
They're not as bad. Like, they take a lot of electricity to run, but for ours too, it was like, oh, what is this bill going to be?
Right.
And we have several meters here. We're to the point now where we're actually looking at upgrading our wiring, just because we're tripping circuits so much, just because there's a lot of machines.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the electric bill. It's never as bad as I think it's going to be every month. So
I remember you trying to talk me off the ledge, and I'm like, you know, I know he's right. He knows what he's doing, and I gotta trust in him. But I just until I see it, I'm gonna be freaked out. And,
Sure,
and finally, kind of like he was right, as usual. Doc was right, and it's all gonna be fine.
Since you opened, what have been some of the things that you didn't expect? Like, you're like, oh, this is going to be like this, and then it turns around and it's like, it's not what I expected.
The hours maybe. I thought that we could pretty quickly staff up, and I wouldn't be on top of it myself because I'm still working a day job at the same time, and trying to keep those things balanced is kind of an interesting challenge. And I thought with my family working it and maybe a couple other folks, I'd get a lot more sleep. And we're 3 months in, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm working 90-hour weeks, and it's a little tough. And I'm not sure if that's really going to go away.
No.
You know, but
No,
any
it is
day,
not.
the way I look at it is any day that ends in an arcade can't be a bad day.
Oh,
you
for
know?
sure.
So
for sure.
whatever happens in my day job, I'm able to put that away at the end of the day. I come on down to the arcade, and for the most part, the staff is kind of trained up at this point. I've expanded beyond my family, and I've got a couple of buddies that are working in there with me, and they get it. They get the concept. They know what we're trying to do. They're enthused about the games, and it's not something you can train somebody for. And I get people all the time coming in. Are you hiring? And it's kind of like, yeah, but why don't you hang out for a while and we'll see how it goes. But you know, there's a certain thing that where there's a sparkle about the games that people get, and you can't train that. They have to have it.
For sure.
Yep.
And again, that's always been, I can't applaud our staff enough, and they are, like our staff, they make people want to come here, just because they themselves are so into the games, and it's been something that we've really grown over the years, like again, being open 2 years now. Saturday nights here, the regular crowd it keeps growing and growing and growing, and it's amazing the amount of people that have met here and now they're all really good friends, and they go hang out and go to movies together and events. And have you had that yet, or is that something that's still?
I think we're still it's still gestating. We've got some folks that are regulars that aren't necessarily in the high score kind of group folks. They really kind of get into the 80s, or they get into playing the games not competitively. And when they're in town or whatever, whatever's going on, they'll come out 2-3 times a month. And they've sort of adopted us, and they're singing our praises everywhere, and it's really been fantastic how much people are helping us to push the business forward. You know, I can't say enough good things about those folks.
How do you, and obviously, again, you're working so much already, but what's next for you? Like here, it's always, there's always more to do. Like what do you have coming up that you're excited about, or how do you plan to grow in the future?
Well, we can't give away all our secrets.
Oh, for sure.
But we definitely want to get the tournament stuff in place. We want to make sure that those communities are serviced. We want to continue to expand our game base. We're still pushing the
How many games do you think you can comfortably hold in your arcade?
So I guess we'd have to determine what comfortable is. If I'm going to follow your model of comfortable, then we could probably fit about 125 games in our
really?
space. Yeah, I mean, at our 50, we're not bursting at the speed. Yeah, who knows if we'll get there. But it seems like the market for used games is kind of dried up in the last couple of months. You know?
Well, there's so many. Yeah, it's everybody's picking them up. Like it's been great, the resurgence in arcades. I over the weekend was talking to somebody who wants to open one out in Ohio, and they were asking me how they go about it. I just got an email from somebody out in Washington. Same thing. He's
He's ready to go.
seen all the arcades popping up and wants to be a part of it, and there's not one in his area. So, yeah, it's definitely, when we were buying games, they were plentiful.
Mhm.
Like, you could go on Craigslist or eBay. I noticed a lot of your stuff, you go, and it's great that you do. Like, you get the dedicated cabinets a lot of times, and it's, do you plan on doing any conversion games, though, or like just taking any cabinet and putting in whatever? Like, have you gone into the board buying phase?
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet, because the level of electrical maintenance expertise that you have to do that is a little higher than most of us have. I could probably cobble together the pieces, but I'm not as comfortable sticking my hand into the monitor the way I've seen you guys do it. We kind of joked about that a little bit. I haven't had my big shock yet.
That's sometimes
Yeah.
looking for some relief being here for so many hours. It's just kind of, maybe this will put me out for a few days if
Right.
I jam my hand onto the flyback.
Yeah, so we're building up our skills, but we're not quite to the point where we feel comfortable assembling something from a bunch of various parts. So we've stuck with, is that going to fall off?
No.
Is that we've kind of stuck with the original cabinets to the best that we can. I definitely would see it in the future. I know we've purchased some cabinets that are conversions, so we'll get there.
It's the board buying thing is definitely a dangerous avenue to go down, just because it's like there's so many boards on eBay at such great prices and stuff, and it's like you don't have to drive out and pick up a cabinet. You don't have to. It's just like, here's a board that's $50. If I get it on the floor soon, it'll be fine. If it sits on the shelf for a few months, that's fine too. At least you'll have it for the future.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem, once you start buying those boards, you never want to miss out on a good deal. So that's how we've got 50 boards sitting in the back waiting to get on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, you've cultivated this backlog of components, so when you get a board, you're ready to go. You get a cabinet you can stick it in, you got a monitor you can put with it, and the rest of the pieces are easy. But having those, I mean, we don't have the space really to store cabinet upon cabinet, so we don't have a big backlog of cabinets. We're actually having a heck of a challenging time right now building up an inventory of spare monitors.
monitors is always the challenge.
Yeah,
for us.
that's really what's holding us up. I mean, I got 2 or 3 games that if I had monitors, I'd be good to go. You
Yeah.
know, so we're eagerly watching for those.
Why and you're not up for LCD monitors?
Nope. No, we want to keep it original.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's nice and easy to throw an LCD in there, but it's just not the same. You know, it's not. I'm preaching to the choir.
Well, and it was something we initially tried. It became we just wanted to get the games on the floor, and we're putting in LCDs for a little bit, and then it really just bothered me so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think originally we had just under 40 machines that held LCD monitors, and I think we're down to under 10 now. And just have had a stockpile of LCD monitors now that we're looking to get rid of. But yeah, it's always, they serve their purpose for some games, and but monitors are definitely the hard thing to come by.
Yeah. And if you're going to have a multi in your basement, right, it probably makes sense to have something as carefree as possible. And an LCD, you're at a multi anyways, so you probably don't have the right controls anyways. So it's less of a deviation from the original intent of the game to have the LCD in there. So that might be okay. But part of what we're coming to market with is that authenticity of the original experience, and you just can't get it with the LCD. You know that
For
Yep.
sure.
I wish everything was that easy, though, man.
Yeah, they go in nice.
Yep.
Super nice.
I know
but-
before we started buying up the machines, I was talking to some guys, and we're putting the business plan together, and they're like, all you got to do is we'll just MAME each cabinet, and then we can, you can have everybody play whatever they want, and you can switch. It's like, yeah, I don't think that's what people really want. It's great to have access to all the games on MAME so you can see what was happening, but you're just missing out if you don't play it the way it was originally intended.
Do you take MAME? Do you play the games before you get them? Like, do you load them
If
up
there's
on
a game
emulator?
if I see a game for purchase that I'm not personally familiar with, I'll definitely pull it up on MAME just to see exactly what I'm getting myself into, and that the gameplay itself will influence my decision on purchase.
Give me an example. Has it gone both ways yet, where playing it has made you want to buy it, or deterred you from buying it?
I think like Time Pilot, I hadn't played. Amazingly enough, I had never played a Time Pilot machine in the wild as a kid, and even here, I didn't really pay any attention to Time Pilot.
Yeah.
And the ability to purchase the game came up, and I'm like, okay, let's revisit it and see if I want to make the investment. I threw it up on there, and I'm playing it. And 6 hours goes by, and I realized, okay, this is a player. I can definitely go with this one, and that was one of the first games I bought. Let's see. There was another one, some racing game. I can't remember what it is, and maybe I've detracted a little bit from the experience of trying to do a racing game with no wheel on MAME.
Sure.
But you can definitely get a sense of what sort of experience the game's going to have visually from MAME, even without the controls. And I was kind of like, this thing's like $50, and I don't even want to spend the $50 on it.
Yeah.
You know, so just let it go. So yeah, we pre-test conceptually if the gameplay is, and I hate to make it me self-centric about my choices in my arcade, but that I've picked up. We've started out with all the games that I love, and I hope that mix resonates with our customers. Because in the end of it, if the arcade doesn't fly, at least I can stick them all in my basement.
Sure,
and
sure.
Have, I can enjoy myself. But it's definitely that's the first choice. It's got to get past my personal playtest. Are there games that I'm going to get that aren't mine? I have a Heavy Barrel, which is a game I'd never played before, and you had one.
Yep.
And I'd come in here, and a buddy of mine is like, "Oh, I love Heavy Barrel. I played it all the time in college." So I tried it a couple times, and it's not a game that resonates with me personally, but I absolutely get people who play it and why they enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, then I've got a Heavy Barrel now. so it's not that I won't buy a game that I personally love, but it's definitely I've just got to I've got to see where it resonates with somebody to get it.
Sure. Is that like we have a few games that are definitely aren't my first choice of games to go play in my off time, but is that like your least favorite game that you have in your arcade?
I wouldn't say the Heavy Barrel is my least favorite game. It's probably it's not one of the ones I would gravitate to right away.
Uh-huh.
Very rarely when I actually get to play them, I'll go play Sega Hang-On.
Yeah.
Just because since we started the arcade, I'm an avid motorcyclist. I ride thousands of miles a year. Spend a lot of time on the racetrack. And this year it's caged. I was looking back through my gas purchase records earlier today, and I put 1 tank of gas on my motorcycle all season. So I just haven't ridden at all. And now I'm sitting here considering, it's like I'm not going to ride the bike anymore, and that's probably about 6 machines. And I'm starting to trade off in my head the investment in the bikes versus being able to put more games on the floor.
We actually have the full sit-down bike version of Hang On, if you're interested in that.
I noticed that.
That's been sitting in storage for a while.
It's very heavy.
It is very heavy. Very hard to move.
Yes. That's what it's
So you definitely grew up in playing arcade games.
Yep.
What was your experience with home console gaming?
So going all the way back, I grew up in the era where it was Showbiz Pizza Place before it was Chuck E. Cheese. And I was in a program in junior high where we had a TRS Model 1 that they were teaching us to program on. And then shortly thereafter, Santa brought me an Atari for our family. It's the same Atari that you play today if you come in and you play on our Atari. That's the one that Santa brought me back in 1981. And shortly later that year, I moved from the VCS, the Atari VCS at the time, up to an Atari 400 computer. And the graphics capability for the computer were much higher. So I quickly kind of set the Atari aside, unfortunately, and jumped into the computer itself. And I was able to write my own games, and that was where it all kind of started for me. And then as time went on, I got to the point where I could drive myself to an arcade. We had an arcade in Villa Park at the North Park Mall. We go out there. They actually had an all you could play deal. I think it was like Saturday nights at 10 o'clock. They'd let you play for 2 hours for $10 or something. And we would do that. That was like one of the first places where my parents would let me drive by myself. And then I worked in a computer store, so I had access to all the various computer systems. You know, we were heavily into Commodore 64 at that store, and a lot of PC stuff. We had Apple clones, and then the Atari line, of course. Yeah, yep. That was a little bit later. So right about the time I was leaving for college, they were making the transition from the old 8-bit computers to the newer stuff. So Commodore had come out with the Amiga, and Atari had come out with the 520, 1040 ST systems. And I kind of moved from being an 8-bit centric person up to the Atari's computers, the 520 series. And as soon as I got to college, they put us on mainframes. So it really didn't matter what you had. You were working through a dumb terminal anyways. And all of the focus on the programming there was more, it was in the math department, so you're getting a lot of statistically driven programming, and you weren't getting to do anything that was visual. I mean, especially on a mainframe, just conceptually it wasn't there. So I didn't really get to pursue that very far. And then life gets in the way. You know, I just started focusing on the other things, and I get away from all of it altogether. I wound up, you know, my background's in accounting professionally, so I went off and did that for quite a while, and then slowly I was able to transition back from accounting into a technology career. I spent a good deal of time with IBM doing consulting there, and coming out of that, you know, I'm able to do a lot of business stuff, and that's given me the free time and the resources to now do whatever I want. And I guess what I wanted to do was open an arcade. Go figure. So we took it all the way full circle. A couple of years ago, I started getting back into it. What was the trigger was, I think, when the Tron reboot came out. I kind of saw that, and the kids saw it, and they thought, oh, that's neat. And I'm like, okay. So we went back to the first Tron movie, showed them that, and they're like, okay. And the kids stayed interested in it, so I'm like, all right, now we're going to take a deep dive. Ready? We went and pulled the boxes out of the basement, got the Atari out, took them all the way through the Atari. When we got those games done, pulled out the computers and started playing with the old computers, showed them how to program in BASIC. And about that time, I'm really getting heavily into this 80s stuff. I'm like, man, I wish I could play the arcade games. So I started doing my search in Chicago. There you guys were. I started coming here. I think gas prices spiked, and it's like, well, I can't go there as much as I want. What do we do next? So I started working the business plan out, pulled the accounting stuff out of the back drawer, and put the whole business plan together. And we let that kind of fester for a while, because it's not $1 million to start one of these, but it's not $2 either.
Sure.
You know, so it's like, if I commit, you know, what's really going to happen? Am I going to sell off all my motorcycles and do all this other stuff? Because that's going to have to be a real focused commitment. And while we're doing it, there's another arcade that popped up in our area. I was like, oh, okay, so now here's one I can kind of play back and forth between these two. So I went over and visited that arcade, and it was there, and it was okay, but it had a lot of the newer stuff, and it didn't quite resonate with me the way I'd hoped, and I'm like, okay. Originally I was like, maybe I won't open the arcade because this guy's opened his up, and I kind of visited his, and it's like, well, he's not really doing what I would do. He's gone a different, it's an arcade for sure, but it's going in a different direction. So it felt to me like there wasn't so much crossover that we'd be fighting each other constantly for business, and I don't think that's the case. So last February, pulled the trigger, just started hoarding machines. We got to the point where we had 40 machines in my house. You know, we had them in the dining room and the living room and the bedroom, and every room in the house had 2 or 3 machines in it. And then we moved on to our first commercial space, which didn't necessarily work out very well. It didn't have the right bathrooms in it. And you know, if folks are going to come play, eventually they're going to have to go to the bathroom, so we had to have that right. And we wanted to make sure people were comfortable. And the place was kind of claustrophobic. We had a really low ceiling, like an 8-foot ceiling. So you know, if you're tall enough, you could actually touch it very easily. And we had it had a nice industrial feel to it for sure, but it just wasn't going to fly commercially. And that was where the underground came from, because it was in a basement. And when we saw that there just wasn't anything we were going to be able to do to make that space work, then we converted over and we found the location we're in now, and we hit the fast forward button. The folks that were in there also, they had run an antique shop in there, and they were willing to work with our timetable. So they packed up, hopped out of the way. Before they even cleared all the stuff out, we were moving machines in, and as soon as they had all their stuff out, we quickly arranged the machines, and we were up and ready to play probably within a couple of days. And we opened on June 15th just to see what would happen, more or less.
Yeah.
And away we went. You know, it was like once we started it, we really couldn't turn it off. We did take one day off on the 4th of July, and we had originally intended to take the whole rest of that week off and kind of do a bunch of stuff and then have like a grand opening. But the Chicago Tribune article came out on July 5th, so all of a sudden it became, well, we can't really be closed on the day the article hits the ground.
For sure.
So we opened up that day, and it's kind of been an off to the races ever since. So that's why people are coming in and playing the games, and they'll find me actually painting on the windows or doing stuff you'd have figured we'd have done before we opened the doors. Wow. Did I just talk for 10 minutes straight?
Well, and would you have it like you've been open for 3 months now? Are you happy you opened it, or is it?
It's been a really interesting experience. It's not just having an arcade, but now all of a sudden you're having a small business, which is its own set of interesting challenges.
For sure.
And then you're running it with your family. That's a whole another set of interesting challenges. And it's been easier probably than I'd expected. The Village of East ND has been really accepting for us. A lot of other places throw up challenges to arcades, which is a remnant of the leftovers from the 80s.
For sure.
Yep. And East ND, on the contrary, has been extremely accepting and giving for us. So we're thrilled with the location. It's interesting.
It's interesting. When we were opening up, there were so many places that seemed they were concerned about an arcade opening because they weren't sure the clientele that would be going there.
Mm-hmm.
And just hearing from other people before we opened, it was like, well, who is going to be coming here, and what is this going to be like? And people would always tell us about how the mafia runs arcades and stuff, and it's
Sure.
like, what arcades are like being run by the mafia in 2012? But yeah, it's great to hear that the town has supported you and been beneficial, because again, we had issues when we opened where people didn't want an arcade at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great after, like, we've definitely seen and we hear from our neighbors and stuff that how it's definitely increased business, and it's a great benefit, and hopefully yours is doing the same, like bringing something to the community. And
the businesses around us definitely could see the vision, right? I mean, when we would tell them we're opening an arcade and we're gonna try and bring it back the way it was in the 80s without all the reasons that the arcades closed at that point, and they got it immediately. Like, we've got an ice cream store that's very close by. We've got a ton of different evening establishments, either bars or restaurants, and they all got it. They're like, oh, you're going to bring a bunch of people in here that normally wouldn't be coming to this area? We love you to death.
yeah.
And so they got it. And thankfully, it's worked out really well. All the folks that have come out, it's a rare occasion when somebody doesn't come out to the arcade and take full advantage of the come and go policy, right? They'll come out there, play their 2 hours, maybe an hour, and then they'll absolutely go get ice cream, they'll go have a drink, or they'll go hit any of the restaurants that are nearby. It works. We're all in this together.
Have you done any or thought about doing any deeper cross promotion with any of the other surrounding businesses?
Yeah,
or?
we're in the process of setting up a couple of things with the local bars, and we kind of want to get to a point where we have kind of favored relationships with any of the restaurants in the area. When you're coming into our arcade, you get a wristband so that people can clearly see, what brought you to the area, right? They know, oh, they're here for the arcade. That's why they got the wristband on. And we want to try and get it to the point where there's some benefit that they're going to get from those restaurants. So if you get a free appetizer or a discount on your meal or whatever it is, we want to fix it so that we're bringing them the business and they're taking care of our customers. We want to make it better for everybody.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the things that we had wanted to do, and it's just been, again, there's so many places around here too that we want to help and, again, be neighborly with, and
Sure.
it's just a time issue.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing about business, right?
For sure.
It's just, you have a million ideas,
Never enough
and
time.
there's never enough hours in the day, for sure.
Switching back on topics a little bit with console gaming.
Mhm.
It's always me and a lot of our regulars were always talking. How do you feel? And obviously, like, console gaming is so much more prevalent and in front of people. When you're talking with somebody who hasn't ever really been to an arcade or has mostly grown up with console games, like, what's basically like your outlook towards console gaming, and how do you talk to people who think that console gaming is where it's at versus arcade gaming?
Huh. I don't know if I've had very in-depth conversations with folks. They're always really surprised to see that we've got a working 2600 or any of the older stuff. But you know, what we're trying to stress with having the consoles in the arcade is the fact that we want to build that sense of community, right? And it's fantastic that you can play with your online buddies at home, you know, via the internet, but it's not the same as coming in and actually sitting on the couch next to the guy, and you know, you're playing a fighting game, and all of a sudden that fighting game is physical, not only in the game but on the couch. You can see the guys elbowing each other as they're trying to. And I doubt the you know, the really serious guys are doing it that way, but the buddies, they're buddies. You can see that they're clearly friends and they're having a fantastic time. And whether it's Soul Calibur on the one machine, or they're over playing Atari Boxing, you know, from 30 years ago, it's the same game. It's just the graphics are a little better on the newer version. But the interaction between the two people playing it on the couch, that's priceless, and you absolutely aren't getting that over the internet.
For sure.
So we feel it's got a place in with the rest of our arcades, because in the end, it's that sense of community that really builds the arcade itself.
And what consoles do you have currently?
We've got the consoles that work because not unlike the arcade machines, we've got some consoles that are up and coming. So we've got a 2600. We've got over 500 games for the 2600. We have a Super Nintendo. We've probably got a dozen games for the Super Nintendo. We've got a GameCube, a couple dozen games for that. We've got a Wii, a couple dozen games for that. We've got an Xbox 360, a couple dozen games. We've got a Sega Genesis that we just got last weekend. We've got about 4 games for that work right now. We're looking for more of those. And then on the back end, we're looking for an original Nintendo. For the life of me, can't find mine, and it's killing me, because it's got to be somewhere in my house. If I can find it, it'll be there for people to play. And I had 2 dozen games for it. So somewhere there's a box. As soon as I find it, that game will be up. And then we've got, I just got a really complete Intellivision set with IntelliVoice and like 30 games for it. And it's just, we've fired it all up, and one game works. We're not sure what the problem is, but rest assured we're going to have that up and running really soon. And what's really neat about that collection, we bought it as a big collection. All the games, we don't have the boxes, but we have the manuals. We have all the insert cards, because that's kind of the real trick with Intellivision,
sure.
having those cards. We have all that stuff. So as soon as we get that one up, anybody that really grew up on Intellivision is going to be jazzed, because it'll be just like when they were little kids.
And that was the one interesting thing with a lot of the console stuff here is, like, people really like to know, like, whenever we post we get a new console, they really like to know that we have it. But it's odd that nobody ever wants to really play it. And it's like they make a big deal out of it on Facebook, and then it's like, hey, we got it set up in the room today. But he's like, nah, I'm going to go play R-Type or Battlezone or whatever the newest game is. And
I'm surprised at the mix that we're getting, because every time I ever came here to the Ghost, I never even thought to play the consoles. It's like, if I want to play a console, I'll stay at home and play my consoles. Sure. I'm going here specifically for the cabinets. And we've had people come in. I get a kid that comes in on a weekly basis to play Guitar Hero, and he has it at home. He'll come in and he'll rock out in front of the whole world. And I mean, he'll be playing Guitar Hero where you're facing the TV, and you have to watch the TV to play that game. And he will turn around back to the game to face the rest of the arcade to rock out to Guitar Hero. I'm like, all right, dude, rock on.
Now, there's a arcade version of Guitar Hero.
Really?
Yes.
That's one of the newer.
Yes, it came out a couple years ago.
Yep.
I think I want to say Raw Thrills put it out, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Would you ever consider getting something like that? Like if like our business model here and the games that like it wouldn't be something that we would get. But if you clearly have the people there for it.
Yeah, well, that guy's pretty unique. He's a pretty unique player.
Yeah.
Haven't anybody do the same thing. And, in the genre that's a much newer game, it's probably not quite in the direction we're going. It took us a little while to actually put an Xbox 360 in place, simply because it wasn't period correct, right? It was a no-brainer to put the Atari in there. But once we got past the Atari, then it's kind of like, I don't know if I really want to put any of this other stuff in there. I knew we were going to eventually get to the Xbox 360 because we want to support the fighting game community. But I didn't know about the Wii or any of the other ones. And then we got to the point where my kids wanted something to do, and they had played all the other arcades tons upon tons of hours. I mean, they essentially grew up with them for the last year in our house. So we throw a GameCube down because that's kind of period. It's not all the way back to the 80s, but there's a younger generation that absolutely grew up on it. And now we got the Sega Genesis, and my oldest son kind of has grabbed onto that, and he's like, I remember playing this in the daycare. And and it falls right in line with our time travel kind of concept of taking you back to your childhood, and it is something that resonated with him. Even though we never had a Genesis in the house, it takes him back to being that little kid at the daycare with all his little daycare buddies, and he'll now do that at the arcade. And if he's doing it, he's probably got a bunch of friends that are willing to have that experience as well. And all of a sudden, now you've got a bunch of buddies sitting on a couch playing a game.
Sure.
And you've got that community. But when you get into the only game I've seen that I consider to be a really successful adaptation of something that's going from a console to an arcade is Choplifter. And that's even that one's a tough one for me because I grew up playing Choplifter on the 8-bits, and it wasn't terribly tough. But man, the arcade version of Choplifter is nearly impossible. I can't get past the first screen on that, and I've played some of the newer. I haven't played the Guitar Hero game, Guitar Hero Arcade, but I've seen a couple of those, and like DDR, we're not looking to put a Dance Dance Revolution, and it takes you in a different direction, and everything has its place. But we're classic centric to begin with, but it's going to take us in a different way that we're not willing to go yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you, and actually you mentioned the fighting community again, like what have you talked with I know some of the regulars of the fighting community that you've been in touch with, like what are your hopes for the future of the fighting community?
Well, right now we're trying to get to the point where we get a date picked, and we can put together a succession of dates where we know folks will be making it a focus to come out. And if we can get the commitment for them to do that, we'll absolutely provide special pricing and whatever it takes to make them comfortable. One of the things that we want to do is we want to use our party room for that. And our party room right now isn't the most private room in the world. You guys have it fantastic here where basically when you shut it down, nobody can see it. Ours is up in the front, right up on 72, and we've got these huge glass windows, and they're wide open for the world to see. So you wind up with the glare and all other sorts of nonsense. So we're taking steps right now to more privatize that space. And once we get it in there, I think it'll be a really good space for the community because there's plenty of room to move around. We've got all sorts of place to put the monitors up on the wall, plenty of power, and tons of seating. So people will be able to absolutely see. And then as you get into the evenings, it sure seems like if they wanted to build an awareness for their community, what better could you do it? Because then we can actually open the windows up and people can see the games going almost like watching a boxing match for real.
Sure.
So I'm kind of hoping we'll be able to go in that direction.
Cool. I guess, is there, let's see, basically if you wanted to summarize what you're going for with your arcade,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say about your place?
We have this Back from the Future kind of logo put together. We ripped off the Back to the Future thing, and we made it Back from the Future. And our whole guise is you're in the future, and we're taking you back from it. The world today, it's an interesting place. And then sometimes you need a break from that. And I, you know, your childhood is probably a place where you were really secure and you didn't have these fears of all the craziness that's going on. And we want to put you back in that moment, right? When I came here to the Ghost for the first time, it was like instantly I was 12 again, you know, and I met the Showbiz Pizza. And the only thing that was missing was the Rocket Fire explosion playing in the background and the smell of the pizza and the beer. Other than that, the noises were right, the games were right, it's all there. So I want people to have that transformative moment. And they definitely get it. When they come through the door, a lot of folks, it's difficult for them to stop and check in and pay. They just want to
Just go right
yeah,
in
they're
get
it's
right
like
to it.
you could see them reaching for the quarters. And I mean, it's kind of a joke with the quarters thing because you guys don't do the quarters here either. And about a month ago, I went through and I had to actually tape over all of the quarter slots because like my APB, my first APB machine, it got broken because somebody stuck a bunch of quarters in it. You know.
I had a quarter or two once in a while. So.
Yeah, and so maybe we can't complete the experience where you have to jam quarters in and you want that, but I think we can do without that part.
Sure. Well, I think we can start wrapping things up. You want to give your? Is there anything else you wanted to add to the?
I think we've bared it all.
Yeah. You should definitely give your location again and your
Sure.
hours, phone number, website,
It's okay.
Facebook plug.
Geez, all the particulars. 1 East Main in East Dundee. Phone number 331-64 Atari. Website undergroundretrocade.com. No space in the middle of the two. You can find us on Orcade. Geez, what else? We're on Twitter. You could probably search Underground Retrocade on Twitter and you'll find us there. That's a repeat of our Facebook feed. You can go to our website. That'll get you the Facebook feed. Plus, it'll give you a link into our high scores and some of the other information about the arcade. And otherwise, we just encourage people to come out to whatever your local arcade is and have fun. And we got to keep this going. We almost let it die, right? And it seems like we're kind of getting it back, and that's a good thing.
More and more are opening up.
Yep.
Always a good thing.
Yep.
So. All right, I'd like to thank Scott Lambert of the Underground Retrocade, and Chris Dellutri for joining me, Doc Mack, here at the Galloping Ghost Arcade. I hope everybody stops in at one of our arcades soon. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks.